Welcome to the Nashville Current Podcast. I am your host, Ed Clay, and today we have Steve Luther with Chord Realty. Steve, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good. Matt had put us in contact and said, hey, I got this really cool guy. He's very much into real estate and Bitcoin. And so I was like, this should be interesting because we probably have similar views on things and economics and things like that. So what do you think right now is going on with everything in the, let's say, real estate market in Nashville, but the economy in Nashville?
Well, that's just a small question.
Yeah.
There's not really a playbook for what's happening right now. I think it's kind of read and react. We definitely saw a little bit of a slowdown in the housing market, around the March timeframe. Real estate's so local. The market in the suburbs versus the urban core, and each little area is a little different. We've definitely seen more of a slowdown in the luxury price points, but we really only had about probably about a 2 to 4 week cycle there where things really got slow, and then we saw another pickup. So we've been riding a pretty strong wave for a while. We'll actually double our business this year. So inventory's been so low, and the demand has just been so pent up. I don't know that we're going to see a massive, reduction in price. I just don't know. I think the Fed is pumping so much money into the stock market right now, and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. Eventually, that's all going to come back and bite us, I'm sure. But I don't know if that's going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months, or if that's 12 to 18 months down the road. I think it's coming.
Yeah.
But I don't think Nashville is going to get hit quite as hard as some other markets. I think you've got a lot more issues with mortgage delinquencies in places like Florida and New York and New Jersey and Nevada and some of those places. So they're going to get killed.
Sure.
Nashville is a pretty diverse economy. Healthcare is a huge industry here, and that's a market that's going to do well in this environment. So, I don't know. I mean, certainly a lot of the gig workers here have gotten hurt. The musicians have gotten hurt with the bars closing and reclosing, which have been unfortunate. But overall, I mean, I think Nashville is in a pretty strong position. I think a lot of people are still moving their businesses here. There's a lot of tech businesses moving here. So I don't know that we're going to see a dramatic hit in Nashville really at all. It's possible. But
Sure. Yeah, see, my thing is, if you look at the mortgage delinquencies, I think it was like 32% of U.S. citizens had not paid their July mortgage as of about July 15th, which is about a third. Seems like a lot. You have Congress putting in legislation that won't let people evict, won't let landlords evict their tenants. You have unemployment that's at a record high. And my thought is huge tank, 30 to 50%. I mean, we're putting together a fund right now that is, pretty good sized fund to buy up everything as it tanks. I've actually kind of counted losses. It hasn't happened yet. And I've been surprised. And I'm like, okay, why hasn't the market caught up to the reality? But I don't think that people are in reality right now.
No, not at all.
You have unemployment. The unemployment's going away. People are getting $600 a week right now for not working, and those are the same people that are saying, "Oh, we should stay closed down. Everything should stay closed down. We don't want to go back to work."
Right.
But yeah, you're getting a check. But when you don't get your monthly or weekly rather unemployment check, and all of a sudden you're feeling the pain that the other people are feeling, I think that it's going to be kind of a domino effect, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of take some of these numbers with a grain of salt. I see a lot of statistics thrown around that I don't know quite how accurate they are. I think certainly the numbers are high for non-payment and for unemployment, but how much of that unemployment is really
real voluntary? Unemployment? Right. Well, a lot of exactly. A lot of it is right now.
Yeah. I think when things start to reopen, and honestly, without seeming like I'm preaching about anything in the medical world, because I have no idea. I feel like a lot of the conversation around what's going on with the virus is political at this point.
Sure.
And so, I see a lot of that dying down after the election.
I see it dying down after the election too. Everything is politicized right now. And unfortunately, you get put in a bucket. If you are against the shutdown, you're considered a Trump supporting Republican. If you're for the shutdown, you're considered a Democrat. And I think people on both sides that might have different views would like to be able to think for themselves rather than being told, hey, you have to think this way or you're going to be put in this box that maybe you fit in or not, or don't fit in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, for by and large, most people feel that way. I think you see the media covering the extremes. It's the way it's always been. And so, there's a lot more just vitriol on social media. And I don't think the average person thinks that way. I really don't.
Right.
But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting right now with, with that, a city like Nashville that we love, seeing it so divided and seeing it's almost like so little tolerance and so much judgment. I never knew how, I say like regular society that doesn't own small business, how they view small business. Mm-hmm. And it's very little respect. Some of the comments that I see on the mayor's posts, oh, just shut them. Like whenever you say shut somebody down and you just say it, you're saying ruin their lives.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, we gotta ruin their lives. Oh, we gotta ruin their lives. Oh, we gotta shut them down. Oh, we gotta ruin their lives. Because that's what you're doing. You're ruining people's lives. They can't pay for their mortgage. They can't pay for their rent. They can't pay their employees. And then when they can't pay their employees can't pay their bills either. And it's a domino effect.
Yeah,
but those same people saying shut them down, if someone were to tell them, hey, we want to go ruin your life. We want to take away your income. We want to take away the way you're feeding your family. They'd be screaming, oh, this is crazy. This is horrible. Yep. Why would you want to ruin my life? And that's what business owners, small business owners, I think are feeling. Why would you want to try to ruin my life? Like, why?
Yeah, and I think it's been a little unfair in some regards too. I mean, you've got some bars that probably sell more food than some places that are classified as restaurants that have been shut down, and it's unfortunate. You follow the letter of the law, and some of these places, according to the law, you have to shut down. But there's no common sense in it sometimes.
No common sense. Well, and you think about like the bureaucrats and the unelected officials. I mean, the health department, for them to be able to have so much power, to yield so much power, it's shocking to me. I didn't know that this could happen. Ultimately, like wow, they can just come in. Like you don't really, in a way, you don't own anything, because if you did, when they shut you down, they would have to pay you. I mean, we should be paid to shut down. Why aren't we being paid to shut down? I mean, if the mayor or the health department goes and says, you can't operate your business, you can't feed your family, nothing you can do about it. We are the gods, we are the rule makers, we are the kings, and we tell you when how you can feed your family or make a living. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't believe that this is actually where we're at, but that's what we're seeing.
But you're so insensitive for saying that.
No. I mean, maybe I'm insensitive. I just don't like seeing people starve.
Yeah. It's a terrible situation. I think it's a slippery slope when you start closing down schools and not thinking through what does that do? I mean, how are people supposed to deal with that now? How do you plan your work around that? If we are going to go back to work. What do you do if you can't afford some type of computer or internet access? And what about the people that are in abusive environments that need food? I mean, there's still programs where they're trying to deliver food, but it's not the same.
Right.
And people just don't think through those things.
No, and it's gotten so politicized, as we were just kind of talking about, getting put in boxes. I mean, what do you think it is that we've reached a point in our city, in our country, where you do have to pick sides. Seemingly, you have to pick sides.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just the media covering the extremes. I sit down and talk to people all the time about what's going on, and I don't hear the extremes that I hear on the media in most of the conversations I have. So, I think there's going to be some shift in terms of social media and how the media is viewed, and I think there's going to be more of a shift to decentralize things, and but I mean that's going to take time, and so I just don't know. It seems like it gets worse and worse.
Yeah, what do you think all this?
Election.
What do you think about all this censorship that's going on right now on the internet?
That's going to just further push for a move to decentralization. There's been obviously a lot of videos that have disappeared off of social media platforms that, obviously there's bias there. I mean, there just is. I don't know what you do about it.
Right. No, the bias is incredible that they could take a video of licensed medical doctors in the United States. That's what it is. These are licensed medical doctors in the United States that are prescribing a treatment that they believe works. Now, whether it works scientific fact or not, I think that's left for discussion. I can tell you, back in February, I own hospital, pharmacies, labs. I knew about hydroxychloroquine.
Right.
There was a chloroquine study in 2005, and we bought 1,000 pills just in case. So it wasn't like there was a question about it. We were like, no, we're going to stock up. I wanted to make sure if my mom or dad got sick.
Right.
We didn't know how crazy this thing was going to be. I didn't think it was going to be that crazy. Definitely didn't see this coming. But no, hydroxychloroquine, here's what's crazy to me. They actually are acting like it's not safe, but they've been prescribing it for 50 plus years.
Right.
It's on the World Health Organization's most important medication list.
Yeah.
And, the idea that they could shut something like that down, you don't have a voice. And it makes me think of like the old Ron Paul quote, truth is treason in the empire of lies.
Yeah.
I mean, so what do you think about that?
I think it's unfortunate when you have, some officials that come out and make statements about how bad things are, and then you question hospitals on, how many people do you really have on ventilators, how many beds, and there's no comment. Why is there no comment? I mean, it seems like journalism 101. You got to verify, what's really going on, and I don't really see a lot of people verifying anything anymore. Somebody makes a statement that gets politicized, and people jump on the bandwagon, and it goes viral, and it's the gospel.
Right.
So, it's an unfortunate situation we're in. I think come November we're not going to hear as much about it anymore.
Man, it's kind of like going away, like when the protests started in June, which I supported the protests and support saying Black Lives Matter. I support, my friends who are marching. One of my business partners is very involved in Black Lives Matter when it started.
But if you're going to allow all these people out protesting, how are you going to shut down all the businesses?
That's the point. Like how the hell you're going to, and then you're going to shut down the businesses. You're going to encourage the protests. It's great. Let's encourage protests on both sides. And then you're going to act like it had no effect on the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And then you find out
blame the spike on the bars.
Yes. And then you find out that it was largely, they weren't even asking people when they were doing the contact tracing where they got, where they were. Were you at the protest?
Sure.
They just started that in July. Finally, one of the reporters asked that question, and they're like, "Oh, we've started that." Do they think we're stupid or what?
It blows my mind. I mean, it really does. There's been so many stories that have come out about, people that have been called, the trace calling or whatever to come in for tests that never actually make it to the test.
I know.
That are positive.
I mean, we had a string of tests. We had a string of tests where it was like 6 positives in a row at our hospital, and we're like, "What in the world?" We quarantined the people. We're like, "How? What's going on?" We hadn't had any, and all of a sudden, in 1 week, we get 6 positives. This is a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Retested everybody. No, 7 positives. Retested everybody, all negative.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
What's going on here? I just got a new
It's a little
PCR
strange.
machine. I got new tests out of China, of course. These tests are out of China, and we're doing them in our own lab now. I'm like, let's just do these in our own lab so we can really, really dig down. Got my own chemist and pharmacist down there to break it down. Was the test done right? But, I mean, here's one thought. I mean, if we're getting all of these false positives and they're not real, I'm wondering, what could be causing that? Why would you get a string of false or of positives, if there's not something up with the tests?
Right. Yeah, I mean, either the tests are flawed or there's something going on with the labs, or I don't know what's going on. My mom actually had to be tested a few times. She's going through dealing with pancreatic cancer right now, and so there were a couple of instances where they needed to test her, and the first time they broke the test 2 days later, so-called, said, "Hey, you're gonna have to come back." Then the lab screwed something up. She had to go back a third time. She came back negative, which kind of surprised me, even though she had no symptoms. But honestly, I was expecting it to come back positive, just because why not?
Right. Well, what's it like right now? Because so you're in a unique situation. Your mom has pancreatic cancer, high risk if she got coronavirus to have a possible bad outcome.
Right.
What are your views as someone who has somebody that you're working to protect on this?
Before we knew she had pancreatic cancer, we just, she was elderly and, was having some abdomen pains. We thought it was probably gallbladder or something like that. We really tried to be careful about exposing her and, having a lot of family and friends over. And honestly, once we found out she had pancreatic cancer, we left it up to her, and she's like, "I want to see people."
Oh, good.
And that's been another unfortunate part of this is, you get people that are terminal that aren't allowed to see their relatives. It's just not right.
And that's a conversation I deal with a lot of cancer patients. So I mean, I see this a lot, and that's a conversation that needs to be had, because we're all focused on not, we don't want them to get coronavirus and die, but a lot of dying is dying with dignity.
Yeah,
I see it a lot with people. It's like as you're going through these processes that are tough for everybody, family, the person that's going through the experience, the person with cancer or the disease, and then to say you've got to stay away.
Right.
It's we need to really look at what we're doing with that. How's the family dealing with it?
I mean, we're having the family over. I mean, we're not,
Good.
it is what it is.
Yeah, you're like, Mom, whatever you need.
The frustrating thing is if she ended up testing positive, they're going to label that as a corona death. She's got pancreatic cancer. I mean,
Sure.
so, it's just, you do what you can. You try to, be reasonable with other people's feelings toward things, but, personally, we're living life. So
Sure.
we're not overly worried about it. Honestly, we wear masks if the establishment that we're going in asks us to.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's a conversation that you don't really, a lot of people are going through, but people don't really talk about. Like, hey, it's like, how do you want to live? Like, this is it. Like you're battling cancer, you're battling a disease, you're, going through these things. My mom, she has a severe form of rheumatoid arthritis. Her hands and feet are deformed. She had multiple side effects to all the medications she had been given over the years. And so she's at a very high risk, had tuberculosis from the side effects of the medication. And I haven't hugged my mom since March. And it's, I'm thinking, like, I don't know if it's right at this point. I'm looking at it like, damn, we're in August now, or almost August. She's not old. She's like 66, 67. But what if I didn't get to hug her again?
Right.
What do you lose at that point? At what point do you get? I've thought about wearing a hazmat suit just to hug my mom. So,
I mean, you're going to see a spike in depression cases and suicide cases and all kinds of things because, you can't have human contact. It just makes no sense. And I think it goes back to the schools too. You can't have kids socializing with other kids. I mean, it's a big part of going to school. And so when you're separating kids like that are going through that stage in their life too, at what point does it become no longer worth it?
Right.
And I think the rates that we're really seeing out there are just so low that it's just overly politicized. That's all it is.
Well, the physical contact, the social distancing is physical distancing. People need touch. They need hugs. I'm a hugger, man. I hug, all my friends, and it's running a cancer hospital, man. You learn that, human connection is key. The most important thing in life isn't your money, isn't this, isn't that. It's not all those material things don't really matter.
Right.
It's relationships. It's how did you treat those around you? How did you love ultimately?
Yeah.
And I've never seen somebody on their deathbed saying, I wish I had more cars or more houses or more money.
Sure.
It's the most important thing is family around them. Family around the bed. Connection as they're going through this. That's what you want. One of the biggest fears, I did a podcast in February, and it's so odd that this was, my biggest fear would be dying alone. I've seen people die by themselves, people that their family just left them, and I'd be by the bedside holding their hand as they're going, or my staff would, or things like that. And, I don't want to die alone, but I don't want to die by myself in a bed.
Sure.
And you think about these coronavirus patients.
Yeah.
They're dying alone. That's my worst nightmare. I've seen it. I know how scary that would have to be for that person. I put myself as much as I could in their shoes, and I can't even imagine the fear, but the physical touch of another human is key.
Absolutely.
I mean,
we're social beings.
We are. So, it makes me wonder, what are we really doing?
Yeah. And the whole mask thing, I think that could have been handled a lot better. You've got, at one point it's don't wear masks, then it's do wear masks, then cloth masks aren't effective. Well, yeah, you can wear a cloth mask. Nobody knows. Like, where do you really get the real story on that? So I'm going to do whatever the establishment wants me to do. Beyond that, whatever.
Did you see that? So you saw Fauci and the Surgeon General saying no masks.
Yeah. There's the picture circulating too, where they were at the ball game and he's got the mask on his chin. I mean, come on.
Right. What do you think about that? Like, what's been your experience through this coronavirus experience from when it started? When did you first know it was a thing? We kind of suspected it was coming down the pike at the end of last year when things were breaking out in China, and there's going to be cases. I didn't foresee it being made into as big of a deal as it has been made into. But in terms of here locally, it was probably really March timeframe before we really saw any kind of major impact. And honestly, we have people that are all over the spectrum on it. We've got some people that are adamant they want to have the masks on, and as we're showing property, only have one person touching anything and make sure they've got a glove on, and doing the sterilizing the hands and all those kinds of things. We've got some that are the exact opposite, like, I don't care, you want to shake hands, sure, absolutely, no problem, and some just don't know what to think. Sure.
And so it's just like, well, I mean, we'll just do it every here and there, which what's the point of that? But
sure.
it's interesting. I think there's so much confusion out there because there's so many different takes on what's going on that nobody really knows what to think. And so what gets broadcast is the extremes.
Sure, yeah. And one of the things that we've been asking a lot is what would bring people together? I mean, how do you bring people together? I know you said the election, that's one idea.
Well, I don't know if that's going to bring people together.
Well, no, I mean, let me go back. Sorry, yeah. No, I didn't set that up right. After the election, it's all supposed to go, it's probably going to go away. So that's one thing that should maybe bring people together if coronavirus goes away. But what are some other things that you think we could do to kind of get people to work together?
You know, it's a tough question. I hope, this is Music City. I hope that we get to the point where we can start having, concerts again and live shows again. I think music is something that brings people together. Just being in that social environment. I hope sports comes back at some point. This is a big sports town now. I'd love to see Major League Baseball come to town. I don't think anything that's got a political twist to it is going to bring anybody together. So, I think it's hopefully, some of the nonprofits will start putting some things together, and churches and music and sports, I think, is what ultimately it ends up being probably.
No, that's we do need those activities where we can gather in groups and enjoy life. And it is, I never thought that we would be shutting things down based on number of cases.
Yeah.
That's what's surprising to me. I thought that, if the cases were rising but the mortality was going down, people would be seeing that.
Right.
I would have sounded a different alarm, I think, in March, like, hey, they're going to shut us down not based off deaths but on cases. Like, hey, and plan differently. I would have planned way differently.
Sure.
What do you think? So tell me about the real estate market. We'll go into more real estate stuff. Tell me about the real estate market in Nashville. When did you start your company?
We started Chord about 4 years ago. I've been in the business about 18 years, but we're 4 years old as a company.
Okay, so Chord, 4 years old. Mm-hmm. What's the evolution that you've seen? I guess in the last 18 years, that's pretty interesting. And then the last 4 years since you started your company.
Over the last 18 years, obviously there's been a big influx of people coming into Nashville. It became the it city. So we saw the urban core start to grow a lot. When I first moved here, there was nobody that wanted to be downtown. So it's been really interesting to see how much of an influx we've seen downtown. We're starting to see people rethink that a little bit and think about the suburbs again, just for distancing, obviously. But it hasn't been as rampant as I think some people have made it out to be online. Or in the media. We've seen, obviously, we went through the recession. That was a housing recession, though. It was caused by the housing market. There was a bubble there. So we saw a big dip. But if you look back historically, most of the time housing doesn't really take a big hit like that during a recession. But it's tied to jobs, certainly. I just don't know. Again, I don't know how much of the unemployment is voluntary, how much of it quickly comes back. I think we still have a lot of businesses, a lot of people moving to town. There's going to be a need for hotels. There's going to be a need for restaurants. There's people are going to want their entertainment venues. So, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people that go out of business. But I think there's going to be a lot of new businesses that get created once we can open back up, and I think people will pretty quickly get back to work. Maybe that's the optimism in me, but I just think Nashville is really in a much better position than a lot of places. So I don't think we're going to see massive hits to. I know you do,
yeah,
but I don't suspect we're going to see that kind of a downturn. There may be certain markets in Nashville, certain price points, that kind of thing that are hit bigger than others, but I just think inventory has been so ridiculously low, and it's dropped. When all this started happening, people, kind of rethought whether or not they needed to move. So inventory declined, even though, there was still way more demand than we had inventory for pre-COVID. So I don't know. If everything just goes to hell in a handbasket, then sure, all bets are off.
Sure.
But I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think the Fed continues to pump money into the market. I think people look at the stock market and think that's a reflection of how good things are. I think the stock market is more it's more thin air than cryptocurrency is.
Right.
That was always the comment you heard about cryptocurrency. So it's based on nothing. It's just you're betting on thin air. Well, what are you doing on the stock market right now?
That's a good point. So you have you're a crypto investor too. How did you get involved in that?
Well, before I got into real estate, I was an IT guy. So I was
Okay.
an IT guy for like 10 years. So, I've always been, I've tried to keep my pulse on what's going on in the tech world. My investments over the years have always revolved either around the tech industry or real estate. So I honestly, I got into it a little bit early on and then got out because I thought, I don't know if this is really going to pan out. Really hate that I got out, but I've gotten back into it. I think it's the future. I mean, it's the next version of the internet. There's no question. I think people misunderstand what cryptocurrency is about. It's moving finance online in a completely different way. It's going to affect every industry there is. Mm-hmm. I've told all of my friends and family, like, you got to be buying in. It doesn't have to be a lot. Don't go sell your house and throw everything into it, but certainly a little piece of what you've got saved needs to be in it. Sure. And you need to be buying in, dollar cost averaging. What do you do when they're printing money endlessly and we're teetering on maybe going to negative interest rates? And at some point there's going to have to be some inflation. I think whether or not the dollar can retain its status as the global reserve currency is definitely in question.
Oh man, I hope so.
I think China's gotten so big into cryptocurrency because they see that as a way to maneuver into that position. So the U.S. has got to step up on it quick. But I think when you've got all these elements in play, how do you hedge your bets? Obviously, I'm stockpiling cash too. I know you said you were too. But at a certain point, can you really hold that much cash because the dollar's devaluing and
it is devaluing?
So where do you put it? I mean, obviously real estate's a good long-term investment, but that's why we're seeing such a surge in gold and
gold's at all-time high.
Gold's an all-time high. Bitcoin is the same thing. It's a hedge against inflation.
Sure.
You've got so many people talking about it now. I think it's got to pop here pretty quick.
Well, yeah. What do you think of this pop? It was at like 10.5 yesterday or so.
I think we're at 11 or so this morning.
Really? Yeah, I checked. There is a chance that it pops to 100,000 in the next 6 months. Wouldn't shock me if we saw.
There's a chance. I don't think it'll go that high that quick. You look at they do the stock to flow analysis, and there's question whether or not that's really accurate. But that's got us at somewhere around like 300,000 per Bitcoin at the end of this bull run, which is end of 2021, end of 2022, somewhere in there. So by the end of the year, you would think you've got to be up somewhere around 30 to 50 for that chart to work.
Sure.
But it's hard to say. You've got to look at what's going on in the world around you too. And, if we do start to see some things tank, people are going to pull money out of it.
Well, yeah, they could. Or if you start seeing things tank and inflation really hits, you could see it run up as well.
It's very possible. You've got so many institutions getting into it now. You've got Paul Tudor Jones has come out and said he's put 2% of his his money into Bitcoin. You've got, I mean, there's just everybody that's got money is looking at it now.
Sure.
The people that were adamantly opposed to it are looking at it now, with exceptions. I mean, you've got the gold guys out there, Schiff, and those guys that are adamant that gold's the only way to go.
Right.
Gold's hard to transport.
Very hard to transport.
What do you do when the government says you got to turn in all your gold again? And I don't know. I mean, I think gold, silver, and Bitcoin are. I mean, that's where you got to be putting money right now,
right.
In addition to holding some cash.
Sure. But. Yeah. Actually, you're making me want to go buy some Bitcoin. No, I got in about 2012, about $3. So it's kind of a different game back then, and everybody's like, "What is this?" And we were actually going to be taking Bitcoin when we first opened at East Ivy here. I was like, "Let's take Bitcoin," and it's hard technology. People didn't really know what it was. I really wish we would have, because you'd have $100+ million right now on that one. But it was hard to really say what was going to happen then, and it was hard to buy then as well. Now
it still is for the average person. It's not as easy as it should be for the average Joe to go out and buy cryptocurrency.
Sure.
That's changing. MasterCard and Visa both jumped on now, and PayPal is rolling it out, and so it's getting there. It's going to happen.
For people in Nashville, because we're talking because we're in the world, but for people in Nashville that don't really know about Bitcoin, how would you explain it, or blockchain?
So I think it's difficult to explain to the average person. A difficult thing to explain to the average person too. It's really Bitcoin, I think, is going to become digital gold. I don't know that it's going to necessarily be the currency that's used. Mm-hmm. I think you're going to have some kind of stable coin, whether that's fiat, if it's a digital dollar or whatever, or some other stable coin. I think that's what people are going to probably be spending day to day. There's going to be a role for different things, but really, what a lot of this is it's code to run, industries. You've got certain coins and tokens that are built around decentralized finance and sort of changing the way banks do business. You've got coins that are built around supply chain management and tracking product as it moves from place to place. That's hugely important for food and drugs. And so, I think those kinds of things, are massively impacted. There are things that get into real estate, where you're talking about how are mortgages generated and how is title done, and what's the role of the realtor going to be? It's certainly going to change. You're going to have somebody that is tech savvy and is more consultative than transactional. So I think every industry gets impacted, and I think it's coming a lot quicker than I really expected it to. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I certainly with everything that's going on, and China being in the position that they're in, and China having a little bump of their GDP, wouldn't surprise me. But I think it's coming quick. Mm-hmm. I think there's going to be massive moves to crypto and blockchain over the next 5 years for sure. Mm-hmm. It's a complete change now.
Right.
That's a longer term.
They're talking about the digital dollar.
Oh yeah. You got every country is moving to that now. All the central banks are looking at it.
I don't know how I feel about that, man. Physical cash, at least, from my perspective, it's good to have some. And the whole digital dollar thing, I'm cool if we have the option. But if you're trying to move us away completely from, what is paper money anyway? I'm sure people said that with gold as well.
Sure.
But, it's just a step. I'm all for decentralization, not necessarily giving the government more power to have a digital dollar to then make me only pay in this digital dollar and not use paper cash.
I think over time, though, that's where we're going.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. Most of finance now it's a mark and a ledger. There's not physical cash that's exchanged between the central banks. It's
sure.
So I think a lot of what we're changing is efficiencies. You know, ACH transfers now, you know, they seem instant, but they take like 90 days to clear. In reality, nobody knows that. But you know, there are a lot of efficiencies to be had by switching to, you know, something that's fully digital. And I think there's going to be a role for the digital dollar. I think there's a role for a lot of different things. I think probably, you know, 95% of the coins and tokens that are out there now are going to go away eventually.
Sure.
But there are a lot of them that are legitimate projects they're going to do well. I think in terms of an investment, for most people, Bitcoin is what they need to focus on. But I think Ethereum is something really people need to have a little bit of too.
Hey, Ethereum's
Beyond
been
that,
shooting up too.
it's all, you know. Beyond that, it's speculation, and you're trying to do a little bit better than Bitcoin does, and,
Sure.
and then move it into Bitcoin.
Yeah, I tell you what didn't move like I thought was EOS. God, I had a lot of hope for EOS.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much money that went into that. You would have thought something would have come from it, but and who knows? It may come back around. You know,
Sure.
there's a lot of coins and tokens out there that just went to almost nothing, that are starting to
Pick back up.
So
Yeah,
you know, you never know.
It's ticking up. I was looking at it, and you know, if you look at even, I mean, you can't compare Bitcoin to gold right now because Bitcoin has been outperforming everything over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It's,
I mean, it's doubled the performance of gold this year.
yeah. Well, there you go. This year alone.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, to think that something started so low and is now at 10,000, 11,000 a day, and you know, even the dips. It's like, you know, buy it. You know, there's good buys. Like right now, I think is for me a good time to buy, just because I am thinking it's about to pop again. And what's the worst that can happen? People say, "Oh, I'll go away." Well, yeah, sure, but like the upside on Bitcoin, it's just incredible. I mean, you got an extra $1,000, throw it in there. You know, it goes to 300,000 from 10,000. You're doing pretty good. You're not going to find that anywhere else.
I think where most people get in trouble is they don't hold things for the long term.
Sure.
You know, they jump in when it's doing really well, and they get scared and jump out when it tanks, and that's the exact opposite of what you should be doing.
Right.
But that's just, you know, that's the psychology of most people, unfortunately. You know, over the long term, there hasn't been an investment that can touch Bitcoin and Ethereum. There just hasn't been. And I don't see that changing. I don't think blockchain is going away. I think the name cryptocurrency almost was unfortunate because I think it scares a lot of people.
Sure.
You know, had it been just called digital currency or something like that from
Crypto.
early on, yeah, I don't think there would have been this psychological barrier that that a lot of people have had to it. So, you know. Can't change that now, but and I think, you know, government regulations and things like that have definitely slowed it down over the years.
Sure.
You know, there's a documentary out now, open source money, about Dragon Chain, which was a project that Disney had spun up, and I mean the SEC just squashed them.
Yeah. Well, you know, we were one of the first security token offerings
Really?
last year. Yep. Well, I should say one of the. Well, there's not a lot of them, so I would say one of the first. I mean, there was a couple hundred before us, but and you know, we had got everything approved through the SEC. We were doing it all above board. And I say above board doesn't mean that people that weren't going through them weren't above board, but we didn't want to risk, you know, the possibility of them coming back. But the market really didn't seem to me like it was ready for it. You know, we were doing a security token offering on hospital business. And people are like, you know, what is this? And, you know, people didn't understand what it was yet. It's going to be what IPOs are now. It's for you know, that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's in my opinion, better system. Well, it is. It's easier. It's not as much red tape. It's simple to understand once you get it. A lot easier to understand than an IPO.
Sure.
But you know, the market really wasn't ready for it yet.
Yeah. I think once you have bigger names, you know, coming into the market where people feel like, you know, it's something they can trust, you know, there's going to be a massive inflow into the digital currency space. You know, I think the institutions have been looking at it for a long time, and we just got to the point where I think where the institutions feel like they can really control it.
Mm-hmm.
The miners had a little bit too much control initially, and could make the market fluctuate, more than they probably should have been able to. So I think the institutions are all seeing now that there's a ton of opportunity in it.
Mm-hmm.
The announcement we just had this past week where banks can now custody crypto. I think all of these crypto exchanges are going to have to get banking licenses, or there's going to be mergers, or there's going to be a lot of shakeout on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think as banks really get into it, and you can you have your crypto account and your checking account, and you just move it back and forth.
It's going to be nice.
Yeah, that's when everybody's doing it.
Yeah. I mean, the idea you're talking about holding long term, and when all the hysteria was going on a couple years ago and hit 20,000 and people were just getting into it for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
you had a lot of experts all of a sudden and it's going to be this and that. It's like, yeah, this is great. Everybody's making money. Well, those have been in it for a while, but I mean, it's really a long-term play.
It is.
I mean, it made some mega millionaires, made some billionaires, but it's a long-term play. If you're playing it for the quick, you're probably going to lose because you never know what's really going to happen over a 2-month, 3-month period. It's very volatile. Mm-hmm. But man, it starts dipping. Every time it dips to 3,500, I'm like, woo, buy more. I'm actually.
I don't know that we're going to see it dip that low anymore.
I don't either. I know that's kind of an old thing, but that was kind of where we were, where it was at. Anything under 5, if I had extra cash, it's like, it's a good buy. Hey, of course, anything really, any extra cash you can throw in there right now.
Absolutely.
But
$20 a week, anything.
Yeah. I mean, just think if you would have put $20 a week in since 2012, I don't know where you'd be, but I guarantee you,
multi-millionaire.
Multi-millionaire. Yeah. $20 a week. Everybody can do that, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody can do that. You just can't you can't be scared. Yeah. That's the problem. People get scared, like, I'm going to lose. Like, long-term investment. What are you hearing about in the Airbnb market in Nashville? Are any of those going to be coming up, you think, that are going out of business?
There's definitely, they got hit hard. I think there's potential there that we're going to see some of those guys starting to sell off. The change in the rules that have happened at Metro over the years has probably helped a little bit because people had to kind of prepare for it leading up to this. You said where you got rid of the non-owner occupied and single family residential neighborhoods. It's a good thing probably at this point. Mm-hmm. We've got people that bought and closed right before this all hit, and so it was a bit of a shock.
Sure.
But we're starting to see it come back. I mean, there's people downtown again. I think once we can open up the bars, it'll come back. Mm-hmm. Nashville is still it's a fun town. People like to come here. There's a lot to do. It's an entertainment city. So I'm not overly worried about it. I think a lot of the guys that are in it have done really well, and so I think most people will be able to stick it out. I think we'll see a resurgence coming this next spring.
Yeah, that's part of my strategy, honestly. I'm
now a lot of the guys switched strategies and put some longer term people in. Maybe did a 3-month or a 6-month lease just to see, push it down the road a little bit.
Right.
But I think most of the guys are going to survive it.
I don't think a lot of people realize too with the EIDL money, mm-hmm. That if you have it as a LLC or a sole proprietorship, they'll give you right now what you lost in rent.
Yeah.
So basically, if you let's say you had March, April, May, June, July, you have those months, whatever you've lost, they'll give it to you in a loan at 3.75% mm-hmm. interest over 30 years. Did you know about that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We've got PPP money and EIDL money.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
Yeah. I couldn't believe how easy the process is for EIDL.
I honestly, that was kind of a surprise to us. We submitted early on, when they were doing the initially it was the $10,000 grant, which became based on how many employees or whatever. And so we submitted for that, didn't really hear anything. That just kind of, like, nothing ever came of it. And so PPP came out, and we kind of shifted over to PPP. Initially, that process was just ridiculous. You know, that was definitely, you had to have the right friends at the banks, and that was a little unfair. The second go around, it was cakewalk.
Sure.
I mean, there's still money there, and
Yeah.
so we were able to get some PPP money pretty easily the second go around, and then maybe like a week later, we got a phone call. I think it was on a Saturday, maybe even been Memorial Weekend, from an SBA person. They were like, "Hey, you're approved for your EIDL. Just log in." And I'm like, "Is this legit?"
Right.
So I'm calling the accountant like, should I be doing this? Like, yeah, sure. They probably just, and the accountant was even like, they probably just want your contact information, set up an account so you can view like your online account or whatever. And I log on, it's like, "Oh, you're approved. Click here to accept."
Yeah.
And the money's in our account within like a few days. It's like, wow. I don't really know what we did or how that happened, but I mean, it was just, that process blew my mind how easy that was.
Sure, and it's got easier too. I mean, they had closed down the enrollment on April 15th, or I think it was around April 15th. And so they opened it back up around June 15th. And when they opened it back up, it was like, exciting for a lot of people because, they had been waiting for months. They missed out. There's a lot of unknowns back then. Do you want to file for this? What are you filing for? How do you do it? All those things. And I give this to the SBA. They streamline that process. They cut it off at $150,000 is all you could get. Yeah. Which I'm sure they did just so more people could get it.
Sure.
But the process is I have so many friends. I started just calling all my friends and saying, "Hey, have you applied for this yet? It's really cheap. You're never going to find an unsecured loan 30 years at 3.75%.
No, there's no way.
It's the best money ever.
Don't go out and spend it, but
Sure.
put it in the bank.
Absolutely.
Just in case.
Just in case. A rainy day fund.
Yeah.
And it's helped a lot of people. So, I mean, that's what's kind of interesting too. People talk about socialism and capitalism. And I'm always like, you realize we're in a mixed economy.
Oh, sure.
This is, and the same thing in Europe. Europe's in a mixed economy. Europe's mixed economy relies more on socialism. Mm-hmm. Our mixed economy relies more on capitalism. But our safety net is socialism. So, people say, "Oh, you like socialism now?" It's like, what are you talking about? We're in a mixed economy. I love capitalism. But if a government forces to shut you down, you better have a safety net.
Right.
Which it should have been a bigger safety net, in my opinion, for everybody else. If you're going to shut us down, I feel like you should pay us to shut down. That is you, the government, shutting us down. You should pay us if you shut us down. But it doesn't exactly work that way. But what do you think about the people that are saying, "Oh, you love socialism now"?
If you're smart, you're going to take advantage of what's offered. Yeah, is what it is. I think there are extremes that are being talked about now that the younger generation doesn't really think through what those things mean. Free college and free everything for everybody. Well, it's not free. It's coming from somewhere. But there's got to be something that's done when there's mandatory shutdowns. This is what it is. What else are you going to do?
What else are you going to watch it all tank?
Yeah.
It's...
Are you going to just throw everyone out of their homes? Renters included? Just make everybody homeless? But what else do you do?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's kind of blown my mind with that. But I am glad that they've acted, at least somewhat. Maybe they need to act more, maybe they don't. It's hard to say. My concern with all this, too, is inflation once the economy does start picking back up.
Yeah. You look at it and really the role of interest rates and the Fed and what the government does when you're a large economy like the U.S., it's really more about controlling deflation than it is inflation. But it's still a dangerous game to play when you start getting into negative interest rates and then you're just printing money like there's no end.
It's never been done before, like where we're at. This is what concerns me.
Yeah,
like
it's
this
insane.
is we are playing with like fire or it could all work out. I mean,
But people don't realize that you're being taxed insanely right now because of the dollar devaluing.
sure.
I
Well,
mean,
people
it's a
forget about
tax.
that. Oh, it absolutely is a tax. People don't realize that whenever you cause inflation or devaluation of the dollar, poor people pay more for items. I mean, that's it. The milk costs more. The bread costs more. Everything costs more, and it's really a tax on poor people more than
It is.
more than people that are well off. And poor people don't understand it because they don't know. They're like, oh, this isn't. Well, actually, they feel it, but they don't understand the process behind it because a lot of the Democrats right now are pushing for this.
Sure.
They're pushing for pushing for these policies that are devaluing our dollar and that are causing the inflation.
Although I will say Republicans aren't really being conservative right now either.
When
like
have-
everybody's just
When have Republicans? I mean, you got to ask. Like, Republicans are generally conservative when they're running for office in their
Yeah.
in their talk, but when they get in there, they all vote to increase our debt. They all. I mean, it's like, they're rhinos ultimately, and you have two sides, much of which is the same coin. It's the same thing. It's pro wrestling out there right now. But now you get stuck in these boxes as well. You're right. I mean, when you're bringing up the Republicans, I say Democrats because a lot of the people that are voting certain ways for policies don't realize what's really happening and that it's actually affecting poor people more. I mean, if I were poor, I'd be voting Republican. I mean, in reality, and I'm not a Republican. By the way.
there's no financial education.
No,
Like the average person has no idea how money works.
no,
None whatsoever. And that's unfortunate.
it is. It is. I wish people did understand how money works. I mean, part of the problem right now, I think that, one of the reasons that we're so blind, I think society is so blind, is because we're dealing with like corporatism and corporate welfare a lot. So it's not really capitalism, it's crony capitalism in a way, because we're allowing these corporations to throw their weight around, ultimately, more so than the people respecting private property rights and individual rights. But when you really look at it, what did China do? China went to capitalism. I mean, they have a totalitarian system that opens up capitalism to prop up their economy. It's scary with China, by the way, because they do have, they're like using the best parts of capitalism, the best parts of control. The power, that's, you want to see a bad model for humans, look at China's model.
Yeah.
Much like the Soviets model used to be, much like Russia is kind of right now. But, capitalism, I like the mixed economy. I was talking to my buddy yesterday about this, actually. When you look at really where we're at, it is a mixed economy. I'm more libertarian than anything.
I am too.
I'm not sure how practical it all is, like getting everything to where government, and so I'm okay playing in this field here with these very, very libertarian principles guiding the way.
The problem with it is it promotes inefficiency. When you're propping up companies because you're afraid of job loss or things shifting to other countries or whatever, it's not necessarily the best product.
Right.
They're in that position for a reason, and they're probably going to get there again.
Right.
So how often do you keep propping them up?
Well, yeah, and you look at the mess that we got in with China. People are like, "Oh, that's capitalism." No, that's not capitalism. That's not a free market principle. What we're doing with China.
Yeah.
Not at all. We've allowed them to, really walk all over us. And I wasn't for the trade war that Trump did, honestly. I'm not for trade wars, obviously, but as a libertarian. But I have to say, I mean, minus the coronavirus mess that's just happened, I got to give him props. Like, wow, he put a lot of pressure on them. He took on China, and to see that, happen, I was happily surprised with that. What did you see coming with that?
I had the virus not hit, I think things could have gone very, very differently. Where we're at today, I don't know. We're in a tough spot. And I think China's played it really well.
Man, China has played it well. I mean, it
wouldn't surprise me if the yuan becomes the reserve currency.
No way. I mean, when I say no way, that's my instinct, by the way, like to fight.
At some point, there's going to be a change.
You can't go to China, though. Like when you take the reserve currency from America and give it to a country like China, you're giving it to truly an evil empire. I mean, this is the most oppressive country probably in the world. They snatch up their people. They have concentration camps for Muslims right now. It's not, they're not our friend, and they're not a friend to anyone. They want to control everything. So whenever you do that, you're completely giving up control.
You are, but I think unfortunately there's a bit of a philosophical shift happening in America right now that it's dangerous. And I think if we're not handling economic policy better, and China, uses this as an opportunity to swoop in with what's going on with crypto and everything else, I don't know. I mean, who really likes the fact that the dollar is the reserve currency other than the U.S.?
I'd say Europe, probably. Most of Europe.
I think they're all a little frustrated about it too, though.
Yeah, I mean, well,
when you have countries that have to take out loans that are based on the U.S. dollar and their currency devalues, and it's impossible to pay back.
Sure.
I don't think they're enjoying that.
No, I mean, they might enjoy it more than dealing with China, though. I mean, you think about what happened with Hong Kong.
But I don't think Europe is necessarily going to be able to control where that shifts. I don't know.
It's interesting. I mean, that's the battle. It's a very important battle right now.
Yeah.
And there's a shift. You're talking about a shift in ideology in the country. You're talking about a shift to Marxism. That idea, yeah, it's prevalent right now. It's prevalent, especially among the younger people. It's a true.
The college campus has completely changed from when I went to school.
Yeah, it's strange right now. It's eerie.
When you hear of professors that are, as part of the class, they're required to go protest. How are you, hearing dissenting views and making your own decisions at that point?
You're not.
You're being pushed.
That's what Marxism does, though, as well. Yeah. Is it silences an opposing opinion. It does, in a way, look like we're in the middle of a Marxist takeover in America. I think it's an attempt, but I'm not sure that it's going to really, really work out once people realize that what they've been propping up is really Marxism. I mean, it's either, if you hate America that much, it's like, do the majority of Americans hate America? Do they hate it? And I don't think so. I don't think that if you asked everybody who's posting things that seem like they hate America, if you really asked them and broke it down, that they'd be like, oh no, we hate America. We think the whole thing should go under and we should become a Marxist country.
Well, the dangerous thing, though, is the way the media is handling all this. I think when people go on camera, they feel like they have to say, yeah, absolutely, just tear it all down, because otherwise they're going to be destroyed among their peers, and because they're not
conforming.
Woke.
Yeah, because they're not woke. Yeah, I was talking to some scientists that are on the left that we're really going into, speaking out against what's going on right now is not, they can't do it. They can't speak out if they don't agree with the response of coronavirus because they're going to be deemed a Trump supporter. And that's
or a racist or a homophobe or anything else. You're going to be demonized
right.
if you have any kind of dissenting opinion.
But I just wonder at what point does the average person say, screw this, we're not going to take that anymore.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think we're pretty close. I think people are starting to get woke on the other side. And in the last week, I've seen a shift. I actually think that whole hydroxychloroquine thing that happened a couple days ago is an eye-opener for a lot of people. Like, you're actually seeing real censorship. Like, are we for censorship or are we against it? Mm-hmm. Do we allow medical doctors, U.S. medical doctors who believe in something, do we allow their voices to be completely silenced because it doesn't follow what the World Health Organization says, which is what YouTube's going by? Mm-hmm. Joe Rogan is an old friend, and he was being silenced. They didn't want him to have guests on that had an opposing opinion to the World Health Organization. So he went to Spotify. That's pretty interesting when you think about that.
Yeah.
We should fight censorship like crazy if we really do want freedom. And the push to silence dissent it could be the biggest threat to our society.
Mm-hmm. But even that's being twisted, Trump's issue with statues and the Confederate flags and all this, it's free speech. I mean, you can hate it all you want, but it's free speech. It's a slippery slope if you start eating away at that. And, you say something like that and you're labeled as intolerant and, so I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the whole statue thing is pretty interesting. I mean, they just took down the statue in Chicago of Christopher Columbus.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about Christopher Columbus here. Now, I understand, like, he came in and he, did some bad things, but
sure,
if everybody wants to look at their past, their ancestors, all throughout the world, you take China, you take India, you take Germany, you take Soviet Union, Russia, you take the continent of Africa, Middle East, nobody has a beautiful past.
Not at all.
And the debate right now, to me, is a human problem. Mm-hmm. We have a human being problem, ultimately. Humans can suck. Humans can do horrible things. Humans can hurt people. They can kill people. They can do things that you don't think humans can do. Mm-hmm. But they can also be great. And they can also be loving. And they can also help people and better society and better their brothers and learn from their mistakes of the past. And that's where I think that we really need to be looking at, like, to me, it's a battle of like good and evil, mm-hmm. right?
Sure.
Love versus hate. Do we want to focus on the bad? Because if we focus on the bad, I can tell you, like, from my experience in life, you focus on the bad, it causes depression, anxiety, fear, anger, all of those things. You focus on the good, that brings in love. That brings in hope. That brings in faith. That brings in, knowing things are going to get better, whether we really know it or not. I mean, that knowing that we have from that faith, mm-hmm. That helps us live better. So, right now, to me, we might be in like a spiritual battle. And without getting too religious, because I'm not over religious, but now more than ever, I think it's a spiritual battle. It's good versus evil. Yeah. How are we really being deceived? And on both sides, on the right and the left. Are we being deceived by Trump over here? Are we being deceived by the left media over here?
Sure.
One of the things that I've questioned from the beginning since Trump got put in office was, how much are we giving up by allowing his rhetoric? Like allowing the things that we don't we would never say, we don't want our kids to do, and we don't want to be. We're not those people. But, for the greater good. Oh, we're doing this for the greater good. Mm-hmm. How long are we going to allow that? And then, how much are we going to allow on the left? Same thing. I think people on the left now are the greater good. Like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. For the greater good, is this really for the greater good? Is getting Trump out of office that important, really? To destroy the economy and to destroy lives and to kill people? Ultimately, I think that's what's happening. People are going to die from the poverty this causes, no doubt about it. Under 40, you're going to have more suicides caused by coronavirus than deaths from coronavirus. I think that's probably, I'm not sure if that's fact, but it's probably close to fact. So, but how much do we give up by not staying true to what we know is right or wrong as human beings? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate thing, though, is everything you see on the media, everything you see on social media, it's the hate side of things. It's how much can we polarize things and blow things up into something bigger than they need to be. The left doesn't have a monopoly on that. I mean, the right does the same thing. Every day and I have to be on social media for real estate. It's important.
Sure.
But every day when I'm on there, it's one side or the other calling the other people stupid, and where does that get you? Have a civil conversation with somebody. You probably agree on more than you realize.
Sure.
But I don't know. I don't know where we're going here. What are your other options besides a polarizing figure in politics?
Yeah.
Who else can win?
Who else can win? Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. You see suggestions of like Kanye running, which, Kanye has issues that he's going through right now.
But I don't know that he's really.
No, I know that. Yeah,
running.
no, absolutely. Yeah. Kanye's not really. But I'm saying when he said it, like, I guess my thought to that, you hear the Rock, or you hear Oprah, or you hear all these things. My point is, like, with what you're saying though, you need somebody that is that figure that has that following already. But the best people probably don't have that following yet. I mean, if you're working a business, if you're, doing things, you're not going to have a giant following. And all of a sudden, Donald Trump gets elected. I mean, he had the #1 show on TV for years.
Sure.
Somebody like Kanye, if he had certain things together, he might make a run for it. You have those type of things. These guys can possibly get elected. And, there's got to be some normalcy, though, some conversation, because, conversations like we're having right now, people are afraid to have them. That's one of the reasons we did the podcast. Mm-hmm. I said, you know what? It's not bad to have a conversation with somebody that has the same views or has different opposing views. I want to have those conversations with people. They're important. Like, if you have a different opinion, just like you said, actually, I think that when you sit down and you look somebody in the eye and you're talking to them, you realize that we do have a lot more in common than we have against each other. Mm-hmm. But when we're behind a computer on social media, typing in the comments, there's no human connection with that. And we can say things that we probably wouldn't say to somebody's face. Mm-hmm. And if you're saying things that you're typing, if you're typing things that you wouldn't say to somebody's face, what does that really say about what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just such a hard thing to figure out. I don't know how you make that better. I have my opinions on things based on my background, the way I was brought up, and my experiences. That doesn't discount the way anybody else was brought up or their experiences. I don't know everything, but I think there's a dangerous thing happening now where there's this thought of my truth and his truth and her truth, and it's all still true. Well, no, it's not. There's still a true and a false. I mean, there may be some psychological things, but a man is a man, a woman is a woman. Otherwise, why are there two words? I mean, I think it's getting really dangerous where there's not more regard for fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is. There's absolute truth. There is that. And then there's a lot of gray with most other things, I think. Specifically, a man and a woman, that's a whole nother subject. But the idea that we're not allowed to have open conversations with people, I think is false. And I think when people start getting that, when they see that 2 people can sit down, 3 people can sit down and have an open conversation without harsh judgment, without hate or visceral coming out, without that polarizing thing that we see right now in the media, I think people are really going to. I think it's going to be a door. I mean, that's our goal with this. How do we have open conversations? How do we encourage people to have open conversations? Because I don't think that everything's going in the right direction right now. I think that there are certain people in power that are realizing how much power they have, and they haven't been getting any pushback. Mm-hmm. And so they feel more empowered to control things.
Sure.
And, absolute power corrupts absolutely. We have given our government absolute power right now as Americans. People can say, oh, well, having to wear a mask or this or that, and, that's not really giving up your power. Well, no, not I could agree with that. I mean, we have to wear a seatbelt when we're driving. That's one thing. Mask, I don't get too much into the mask debate, really. But when you allow a government to shut you down and not pay you, and when you allow unelected officials to shut you down without anybody to hear from, that's tyranny.
Sure.
We're in the middle of that, and we got to give a resistance mm-hmm. to that tyranny, whether it be from the local government, whether it be from the federal government, whether it be from any government, really. We've got to resist tyranny. Mm-hmm. And people think of tyranny and they think, it's just like something like Hitler. But I don't think it's that. I don't think a lot of the local government officials and throughout the country, or the governors or anything like that, I don't think that a lot of them even really know or see that they are getting all this power and it being dangerous. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, I'm going to be the savior here.
Right.
I'm going to help my people that don't know any better, that shouldn't have any say. They just don't know. They're not smart. They don't have the doctors or science or this or that. And they become corrupt.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of times it becomes about getting reelected,
Oh, man. Yeah, and that's another thing right now that we're close to. I mean, we have November elections, and it's not that far away. And, the idea that we're in the middle of a pandemic and elections could influence somebody making a right decision, mm-hmm. it's really, really, it's incredible to me.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I do think that the question of masks and that's a difficult thing too, though. I mean, I think to some degree you have to kind of respect the other person's point of view, and if you see someone without a mask, can you really jump all over him? Can you really? Maybe they do actually have some kind of medical condition, or maybe they just think it's stupid. Why is it, someone's point of view more important than someone else's point of view? That's a tough one. And then you get into, what type of mask is really right. Some are designed for contaminated environments, some are designed for a clean environment, and some really don't do anything when you really get down to it. So does putting a pair of underwear over my mouth, does that suffice? It's just insane to me. And, okay, seatbelts, yeah, seatbelt law to save your life. Well, what about cigarettes or alcohol or, let's legalize marijuana. I mean, how different are those things really?
Yeah, no.
There's got to be some personal freedom still.
Oh, there absolutely has to be personal freedom. And, the reason I was saying I don't get the mask debate that much, and I talk about it some, but it's such a polarizing thing now.
It is,
and
yeah.
I was wearing a mask before. I was in an airport 93 days last year, so wear a mask a lot. I saw people in Japan do it. I kind of looked into it. I thought, that kind of makes sense. You have a mask on, and just somebody's coughing or things like that. I understand the particles are small, et cetera, but it was common sense to me for a while. If they were doing it, they're a very healthy society, I'm like, give it a try. Then the Surgeon General and Fauci came out saying masks don't work. It's actually could be more dangerous, blah, 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 blah. The Karens of the world then would literally attack us at an airport if we were wearing a mask. All of a sudden, I'm getting attacked for wearing a mask.
Sure.
I'm like, what in the world's going on here? Why are you attacked? Oh, so now I'm the one wearing a mask, and people on the left are screaming at me. Mm-hmm. Fast forward, Fauci and the Surgeon General come out and say, oh, masks are good. Fauci ends up saying, I was just lying to you because for the greater good.
Right.
I was lying to you for the greater good because we didn't want there to be a run on masks for healthcare workers, but they actually do make a difference. Mm-hmm. And then those same people on the left start going crazy attacking other people.
Sure. But how do you know he's not lying to you now?
Because government's God. What they say goes at this point. It's Fauci. You got to trust him. Because they're telling us. Yeah. What do you mean? The science is clear. The science is clear. The science is clear. You tell people the science is clear enough times that haven't worked in science. I work in science. Science is rarely clear.
Yeah.
Do the same experiment, come on. No. Do an experiment in a different lab, different parts of the world. Mm-hmm. Tell me if you get the same result. Most of the time, yeah. Let's just be real about this. Same lab, different parts of the country. Not getting the same result.
Sure.
But science, so the idea that science is clear is crazy to me. It's not. But that's what they're forcing now people to start. And then people are like, you're not following science. You're a science denier. Mm-hmm. You're a science denier. Yeah. All of a sudden, I'm a science denier because I question the science that they're putting out there when I know that they have no idea what they're talking about.
Sure.
The mask thing, I actually do. I'm for wearing masks. Now, I'm not for the government forcing people to wear masks. Mm-hmm. I think it probably does make a difference. I don't think that the science is settled. Probably does make a difference. Makes sense to me if you cough, that you don't get as many particles going outside of the mask if you have coronavirus. For personal safety, probably not that much unless you're wearing an N95. I question the cloth mask. You hear them say cloth mask. I'm not so sure about that. Let's think about that. You're getting all these particles on there. You're sweating. This is not healthy here. Okay, unless you wash it every day. Cool, if you wash it every day.
Every 30 minutes.
Yeah, every time you go out.
Right.
But, so I'm not sure that the cloth mask is safe for the person wearing it. It probably does make it safer for other people. But the science isn't settled. And it would be cool if people could get behind it voluntarily in a way that wouldn't be so polarizing. Because to me, that's something that we could unite behind. We're doing this in solidarity with others because we want to keep other people safe. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily for ourselves, but for other people. To me, that's somewhat of a unifying message. We'll see.
But when you see people wearing masks under their nose.
All right.
What do you do with that?
It's pretty hilarious. It definitely is pretty hilarious when we see them doing that. But it looks like we have some guests coming in here. But anything in closing that you'd like to say, whether about your company or?
I appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Enjoyed meeting you. we got to hang out more.
Well, let's
You're
do it,
an
man.
Interesting guy.
Oh, thanks, man. We'll talk some crypto and all the
absolutely.
things, man.
Hey, everybody buy crypto.
Buy some crypto.
Buy some crypto.
That is
I even
right.
got my niece to buy some crypto, which, like, she is the least techie person. I can't help her with it, but but if she can do it, everybody can do it. Go buy some crypto.
I love it. All right. Well, Steve, thanks for being on the Nashville Current Podcast, and we'll talk to the listeners soon.